You know, the Christmas story is so spectacular and so enthralling that it captures the imagination of all people. No matter the age, the time in history, or cultural background, people have been awed by the Christmas story. Do you know why? It's not just because it's the greatest story ever, it's because it's true. That sweet little baby lying in a manger is God's answer to the brokenness and the sin that has plagued our world since our rebellion began. You see, Jesus came to do what none of us could ever do. God came down and became one of us so that he could live like us and die for us and live again with us. Christmas is God's solution to our deepest struggles. And that's why the angels announced at Jesus' birth that this is good news of great joy, which is for all people, Luke 2:10. But here's the catch. Christmas is all about waiting. This season is historically known as Advent, which means coming. Christmas is the celebration of Jesus' first coming, his arrival. But his arrival was not without waiting. In fact, God made a promise to Adam and Eve that one of their children would crush Satan and all of evil, right in Genesis 3. And then God made promises to Israel about a coming Messiah king who would rescue his people. And Isaiah speaks of this child who would become a king, who would be their savior. And yet after hundreds of years, God's people are still waiting. Promises were made, but they had not yet been fulfilled. And God invited his people to not just wait, but to actually wait with hope. Hope is this beautiful, rich biblical word. It means eager expectation. Hope is waiting with the assurance that what one is waiting for will one day come true. And the arrival of Jesus at Christmas is the fulfillment of our hope. We celebrate God's faithfulness and his goodness. We're reminded that God will always come through on his promises. And yet, here we are, 2,000 years later, and we're still waiting for Jesus' second coming. And look, life is still hard, isn't it? We still struggle with relational wounds and disease and family strife and financial hardships and depression and loss of loved ones. Some people wish that, during the holiday season, if we could just get a little break from all the brokenness of life, if it could just kind of delay for a month. But we know that doesn't happen. And so we find ourselves asking the same question that God's people did so long ago. Will God fulfill his promises? Can God's light really shine in this darkness? Can we still have hope? Advent is meant to stoke the flames of hope in our hearts once again. That no matter what is going on externally or internally, we seek to fix our hearts on this incredible gift of Jesus. We know that Jesus doesn't take away all the pain, but he does promise that our pain will not be wasted. And we find comfort in the assurance that he is a sympathetic high priest who his suffering helps us to endure the worst of our darkness here on earth. But more importantly, he has promised us that the light of his life can dispel our darkness, that he's defeated sin and death through his resurrection. And now we have this unshakable hope in the second coming, the second advent of Jesus, where he will wipe away every tear and make all things new. This is the hope of Christmas. And this hope sustains us in the midst of evil and darkness and pain and sorrow. And not only that, it actually gives us joy. The joy of walking with God right now through his Spirit. The joy of being more than conquerors right now as his children. And of course, the unspeakable joy of seeing him face to face one day soon. This is the power of hope.